Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video I'm going to show you all of the new cool features added to the command line parsing library and how to use them. To name some of these features: dependency injection, command discovery, suggestions, and positional parameters. To demonstrate this, I'm going to make a user management console application. This will be able to look up specific users, get all users, and register a new user. So let's get started. You can find the source code of this tutorial on GitHub. I will put a link in the description of the video. So the first thing, as you can see, I have some pre-written code already. The users database, don't have to worry about it, but the most important thing is that it has an index that is unique for the username. We will come back to that later on. Then let's check out the program. Class, here we have a configure services method that will add the database context and add a user service. Let's go to the user service. This contains a register user, a get user, and an is username unique, and a get all users method. The implementation itself is not really important. We can close out of this, we can close out of this. And then we have some models. We have the user model. It has an ID, username, and password. We then have the get user options. This will be used in combination with the get user command that we will create later on. This takes in an integer ID and it is required. We don't have the package installed yet, so that's why we have squiggly lines. We have the global options. This will just define if we want verbose output or not. And we at last have the register options. To register a new user, it takes in a username and password, and obviously those both are required. So let's go to the program and let's start by adding a NuGet package. Go to the browse tab, and then in here just type MatthiWare.commandline parser. At the time of recording, the latest version is 0.5.2. Install that version. There is also a Fluent validations package, but we will come back to that later. So now that we have the package installed, we can create a new instance of the command line parser. So let's create a new parser equals new command line parser, and import MatthiWare.commandline namespace. Because we have some global options, you can give them here as global options. Yeah, global options, like that. Import the namespace, and then we have some parameters that we can give them. We want to specify some parser options, and then we also want to add the configure services so we can use dependency injection. So first, services equals configure services, and then also some options equals new command line parser options, like this. And then in here, we have some custom options that we can define what we want. Let's say the app name is important for the outputs. When the user mistypes something or wants to have some help, it will show the app name as well. So in my case, it's user management app.exe. So I'm going to start off with that. So now we can specify the options and the services. Now, the next thing you want to do is actually parse the arguments that we got. So to do that, let's call it results. For result equals, and then a await parser dot parse async, and then in here just put in the arguments that we had. And then most likely you will have something along the lines of this. If the result has errors, then we want to do nothing. It will automatically print out the errors and show suggestions based on what kind of error the user had. So we can just return here if needed. You don't need to print out anything yourself. The parser will take care of that. And then, if you remember, we had some verbose option. So let's do something with that. So basically what I want to do is, if the result, and in here there is a result property that is of type global options. So if we had the verbose results, very simple, we will just print verbose. Well, we'll print verbose specified to the command line. So this should be enough to actually build it. So Ctrl+Shift+B to build it. So let's then go to the command line. In here I have the user management app.exe, and basically if I now type the -v, you will see verbose specified, and if I say -v false, it will not print it because it was false, and if I don't specify the option, it will also not print it. So that was the first step. The next step is going to make the options for register and get user and get all. So let's add a new folder, call it commands, then add a new class. Let's start off with a, maybe this is the wrong one to start off with, but let's already define it. So a public class gets all. Now for this we need to, let's see if it shows up. Yep, using. So we need to import the command using statement, and then this takes in the global options, and we have some custom options. In this case, no. For the get all, we don't have custom options. So what we need to do here is override the configure methods. Don't need the base in this case, and we can just say builder.name is get all. It's not required, but we want to give it a description. Gets all users from the database. Something along those lines. And then we also have the on executes async. I'm going to use this one because we have the options in here. And then basically what I want to do is get it from the user service, but we don't have the user service available here. So I'm going to add a constructor at the iUser service. Let's create a field for it. So now we have the user service available. And then basically what you can do is, since this is the get all, going to mark this as async, users equals await, user service, get all users async, and then a console.writeLine, users, something like this, and then we here have a list of all the users. And then based on, so let's go do a for each user in the users collection. And then basically what we want to do here is say if options dot verbose, then print verbose, else print normal, right? So let's do the print user, and then print user verbose, generate the methods, and then for this also generate the methods. So here we're going to have the console.writeLine. The print user is just going to print something along the lines of user.user name. While this one is going to print pretty much everything. User ID, something along the lines of this. So that's the first command added. Let's now maybe add a more interesting one, and I'm going to copy most of it, add a new command, register command, right? Going to paste in all of this, import the namespaces for pretty much everything. So now that all of the namespaces are important, I can rename this to register command. The onConfigure method is still correct. Maybe call it register. New user to the database. So now we can go to override, on execute. I'm going to pick this one, on execute async. We have some register options. Register, we don't need to return the base. Okay, that's all fine. And we have the user service. So for user equals await, user service, register user async, and then register username like this, and register password. Right, it's going to complain about make the method async. Okay, let's do that. This will register the user if possible, and then return a user model. So basically, once again, if the global options in this case, if we have verbose, we will print out the new ID, and otherwise we will just print out user registered. User registered, and otherwise we will something like this. User, and then user.username registered with ID of user.id, right? So yeah, that will basically be that. So let's now do Ctrl+Shift+B to build it once again. And let's see if it's successful. So that's good. Let's go here. Now we have, if we type -h. Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I confused myself a bit here. But basically what I forgot to do is actually, we now have the commands, but I didn't register them. So what you can do is you can say add command or register command and then build it up yourself. But I already defined it here, so there is a new method added, discover commands. And basically it takes in the assembly where you want to discover the commands from. So in my case, I'm going to type assembly, import the namespace, and then get executing assembly. And basically now it will add all of the commands here that I defined here, and it will add them automatically. I don't need to specify which commands I want to add. It's by convention, all of these will be added automatically. So if I now try it again, you will see I now have the get all and register commands available. So let's try them out. Register. And then if we go to the register options, you can see we have U and P. So let's go -U, my user name, -P, my password. And you can see user registered. Now if I go to my user1 and at the end or somewhere I add a -H, -V, it will print out verbose specified and username with username1 registered with ID 2. So that's very interesting. I can also try out the get all. You can see we have the my user and my username1 and then -V. And you can see we have user ID 1 with the password and everything. So that's all working very nice. And then also to show one of the features, the suggestions. Let's say I type get all with only one L. Then we get a get all is not recognized as a valid command. Did you mean get all? And yes, that's correct. I meant that actually. So then the user is aware and he or she can use it. So let's see. There is one more thing. that we can do. Because the user may not want to always type the -u and -p, because they just assume that the first one is the username and the second one is going to be the password. So how can we do that? So let's check it out. If I here type option order, I can basically say the first option is going to be the username, and the second one with the order of 1 is going to be the password. So let's build it and let's try it out. We can define the -v, it's fine. But because the database is unique, I'm going to put a 2 behind it, and you will see my username 2 registered with ID 3. And then also the verbose specified, so that is working. So we also have the get user options. So let's once again add a command, get user command. This will look a lot like the get all commands. So I'm going to paste it here, just copy and paste it. Get user command, get user command. Then once again import everything, the options, get user options like this, gets a user from the database. I'm going to just quickly re-edit like this, options, get something like this. And then we can reuse those print user and print user for both options, will be very helpful. So for user, await user service dot get user, and this takes in an ID, but we get the ID from here. So it's get.id. If user is null, then we say console.writeLine user not found, return. Maybe I will just mark it async, so this squiggly line gets gone. And now it's gone. And then we basically have, once again, if options.verbose, then we print user verbose, user, else we print the user normal. So let's try it out, shall we? Let's build it. It succeeded, so that's good. So we had a user with ID of 3. So actually, let's try it out. Get ID 3. Let's see what it says. My username 2. Okay. And if we specify the verbose flag, it will print out my user ID 3, my username and password. So that is very good. But one of the things is if we would register a new user with the ID, the same ID with a user already registered here, we will get a database exception while updating. That's just an error from the database provider in my case. But we don't want that. We want to give a more a better feedback to the user. We want to actually validate the user inputs, right? So what we can do for that is create a new validators folder, and now is where the other Nugget package comes in. So once again, MatthiWare.commandline parser, and here we have the Fluent validations. Install it. And then we can add a validator. This is once again going to be a public class register validator, and this time it's going to inherit from the abstract validator. Yep, from using Fluent validations, and this takes in the object that you want to validate. So register options. So now we have this. I'm going to add a constructor, and the funny thing is we can also use dependency injection here. So add the user service if it's okay, it doesn't want me to user service. Well, in this case we don't need a field because we define the rules in the constructor. And you can say rule 4, and then you can specify the rule for whatever. So we know that the username must be unique. So we have a must async in our case. Going to use it, the async version. So it must async, and then user service is username unique. So now it will use this validator to verify that the username is actually unique. And then we can also specify a, where is it, with message, not unique. Okay, so that's actually what I want. The username must be unique, and otherwise we'll print not unique to the error. But in order to do this, we will need to add parser, and it will not show up here. So I'm going to add this using statement myself. Oops, using, I mean, MatthiWare command line extensions and Fluent validations. Let's see, now it's here. So you have to use Fluent validations. That's this takes in a config action. So here you can just say use Fluent validations and then config. And then we have a add validator. The first one is the type to validate, and the second one is the actual validator itself. So we want to validate the register options using the register validator. Like this. So now it knows the register options, it will run the validator for it before executing any of the commands. So let's go to the, let's build it. Let's go back. Let's try to register my username too once again. And now you will see a different error. It will say unable to parse register, validation failed, username not unique. So that's very, very handy. So that's pretty much everything of all of the new features demonstrated. And now we have a fully working console application that is able to register new users, get a specific user, and get all users from the database. If I would mistype the G, it will print get, so there are built-in suggestions for it. So yeah, I once again will say that I will push all of those the code here to GitHub, so you can check it out yourself and try it out yourself. So that was pretty much everything. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Also, don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you liked it, of course.